السلام عليكم دكتور سهيل.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
السلام عليكم دكتور سهيل.
وعليكم السلم ورحمة الله وبركاته. كيف حالك؟
The energy after Moroccan win. I see you.
You remember last week I asked about the predestination, and you said we don't have in Islam predestination. Okay, I tried to translate predestination. It's come that al-aqdar in Arabic. You know what they mean. I don't understand. I don't know what it's mean in Christianity, and try to convert what we have in Islam about al-qadar, al-aqdar. If you have knowledge about it.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulullah. And I don't, when it comes to Christianity, I don't know exactly the meaning of predestination in Christianity, but the Islamic perspective, there is qada and qadar. There are divine destiny. That's how they translate it sometimes. That we don't know. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows it. And that applies to many things. Applies to what you're going to do tomorrow. Are you going to accept Islam or not? When a person is going to die. All of these are known to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are not known to us. وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض تموت. So for us what matters is, because we don't know it, therefore we have to focus on the part on the other side, which is that everything is a choice. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not force us to do anything. Even accepting religion or not, he left it as a choice. The fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what kind of choice we're going to make, or what kind of decision we're going to make, that does not relieve us from our responsibility. So we have to focus on it's a very delicate issue. We have to focus on the side of the human being, that basically right now and every day, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, there are many choices that you are making, many decisions. And actually, even the things that we do routinely, they are originally choices. But as they say, choices, things that we do for a long time, they become habits. But originally they were choices. I mean, somebody decide to smoke or not to smoke. Now, after smoking for a long time, they say they cannot stop because it became a habit, and habit is not easy to change. But originally that was a choice. And it is a choice for that person to decide to stop smoking. It's still a choice to continue smoking or to stop. So from our perspective, we say everything is a choice. As simple as that. Everything is a choice in this life. And the fact that Allah knows what kind of choices we're going to make, or what kind of decision we're going to make, that should not change anything. Nobody is going to throw himself or herself under a car running or a vehicle and then say, okay, it was my predestiny for me to die at this moment and this way. That if somebody does this or says this, then they be called fool or crazy. That applies to everything else. I mean, it's a decision for you to maintain a good health, to eat healthy and to exercise. It's also a decision not to do that. But there are consequences. In both cases, there are consequences. It is a decision to balance work and family, and to spend quality time with your family, to raise your children, that will have consequences. somebody else decide to dedicate themselves to business, and they fool themselves, but I'm doing this for them, and then they neglect their children and they end up paying the price. So it's that's the nature of life. To make it very simple from Islamic perspective, everything is a choice. Now, after the fact, it's a different story. So before the fact, before the incident happens, that's a choice. Everything is a choice. Now, after the fact, that we have an Islamic recipe on how to deal with incident after they happen. If it is beyond your capability, then you have to accept it as qada and qadar. And even in this case, you have to look inside and review what you have done. Maybe this is happening. If it is a bad thing, maybe it's happening. If it is a good thing, then for us, it is simply a blessing that should make us more grateful to Allah, and a test that we have to pass it successfully. And we should not fail like Qarun from the people of Musa, who said that I made this wealth because I'm smart, or because I know how to do business. قال إنما أوتيته على علم عندي. So if it is something good, then you have to be immediately makes you more grateful and realize that it is a test, that whatever you have given, health, power, money, whatever, time, you know, that's a blessing, and you have to take advantage of it. And sometimes those opportunities, they come in the form of challenge. Like somebody lives to see his or her parents become old and maybe sick, and they need his help or her help. It looks like a challenge, but that's an opportunity from Islamic perspective. That's a blessing. And the Prophet said that he basically cursed the one who got that opportunity and misses it. Basically does not help him end up in heaven. On the other hand, if it is something bad, then the recipe is first of all to accept it if it is beyond your control, like loss of beloved ones, like something that you have no control. That's qada and qadar. And then also you have to check if it might be punishment, it might be wake-up call. So it should get you to do more istighfar and come back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking forgiveness and seeking help to deal with that situation. And it's like basically use it as an opportunity for like repentance. And also you have to do some self-assessment. What is it that you have done wrong that caused this incident to happen? What is it that you failed to do? It is something that you should have done and you didn't do, or you didn't do it in time, or you didn't do it adequately. So that muhasaba, or self-assessment or self-evaluation, leading to lessons learned. And I find this an amazing approach, Islamic perspective in dealing with the life incidents. It's an amazing approach. It's a very fine line. I know other approaches might be easier, but usually extreme approaches are easier. Make everything that is predestination. Like there was a movement or a sect in the history of Islam, Jabriya, people who are that whatever I'm doing, I have to do because that's predestined. Or, I mean, all other approaches will be easier, but this delicate approach, that delicate balance, that you accept what happened to you, especially if it is beyond your control, but accept responsibility for it and learn lessons from it, and make everything in life brings you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either from the path of gratitude, makes you more grateful, or the path of istighfar and sabr and seeking help and forgiveness. And that's the meaning of the hadith in which the Prophet says that all matters of the believer are good for him. If you are blessed with something good and you are grateful, then you pass the test, and that's good for you. If you are tested with something that is with some hardship and you are patient and you handle it the right way, then you pass the test. You succeeded. But overall, we should never ask for hardship or ask for that to be tested or look for it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to be happy, wants us to be successful in this life, wants us to succeed in everything we do, wants us to have minimum or no problems in life. So we should not, in the name of Islam or religion, say it's okay if things fail or if things get messed up, because we should focus on akhirah or we should focus on religion. That's not true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to live a happy life, to be very successful, to build and run a successful and happy family. It may work, it may not work, but in all cases, you should adopt that approach of holding yourself responsible and learn lessons. Any other questions or thoughts?
Yeah, I have another question if nobody has a question. Every crime in America happening, I mean, mass crime, they try do psychiatric evaluation. I know it's a joke in the Middle East. They talk about America. If Muslim, he's terrorist right away. If he's not Muslim, he's mentally ill. What the Islam talk about it, if I kill myself, it's meaning I have mental illness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can explain how the Islam deal with this issue.
وحتى terrorism is a mental illness. It's not to justify what they do, but it's a horrible act. But these people also, they have their minds are messed up. So whether somebody does first of all, we have to have only one standard. Now, what other people choose to do, some people have agendas. And those who have agendas, you cannot blame them. If they take advantage of a terrorist act committed by Muslim or in the name of Islam, and they used against you, you can only blame yourself. You cannot blame them. There are people who have agendas. And unfortunately, in our culture, having an agenda is a bad thing. They say that this person has an agenda. Actually, the one who doesn't have an agenda is a bad thing, should have an agenda in life. So other than these people, you cannot blame them. That's an open field of tadafa, where people are advocating and advancing their agendas. So you cannot blame those. On the other hand, for us, we have to adopt only one standard, which is that these are crimes, horrible, heinous, coward crimes, regardless of who commits them and for what purpose. Whether the person does this because of personal issue, failed relationship, mental issues, whatever. they end up doing this mass shooting, or a person who has an ideology, whether it is religious or not. It might be not. We have seen horrible acts committed in the name of Islam, but we have seen also Muslims victims of horrible acts that were committed in the name of another radical or fanatic ideology. So it doesn't matter whether it is racism, whether it is extremism in extreme ideology or extremist ideologies, and whether that ideology is religious or not. These are horrible acts that reflects that somebody is not correct. I mean, the Muslim individuals and Muslim groups, they call themselves Muslims, who commit those atrocities in the name of Islam. Not only they get the Islam wrong, but also mentally there is something wrong. These people cannot be correct. They cannot be right. Bottom line, this should be like any other social disease. People have to find out the root causes of it and resolve it. Now, the root causes for mental illnesses, it's understood. Maybe you have to intensify the efforts to check people up, like in colleges and in high schools and schools, etc. So that's the track of mental illness. This has to be dealt by experts. They have to come get to the bottom of it, find out the root causes of this problem, and the proper solutions. The one that is in the name of ideologies, it's the same thing. The name, if particularly the one that is committed in the name of Islam, we have a responsibility to do. We have to stand out firmly for these terrible ideas and raise the generations of Muslims who are immune and inoculated totally against those ideologies and those thoughts of violence and killing and seeing the world as Muslims versus non-Muslims and looking down at other people or allowing yourself to judge them or to force them or to do anything. So we have a big job to do. And as I mentioned before, the Islamic literatures, unfortunately, the old and the recent, the contemporary, are full of ideas that justify and encourage those acts of terrorism in the name of Islam. There are the interpretation of verses. There are scholars now who are active and they have either sites, they're called themselves scholars, either sites and followers and channels and a lot of material that basically either explicitly justify these and encourage them and encourage Muslims to commit them, or bring the listener very close on the verge, and then it's a matter of small push, basically condition their thinking in a way that can eventually lead them to commit those incidents for anything. I mean, for a reaction to anything that happens in the world, because they were prepared for this, unfortunately. So it's a lot of work to clean and cleanse the minds of people. It's a work that need to be done by people and by governments, because majority of governments forget. I mean, if we put aside the governments that encourage these things because it serves their purpose. We're talking about even the governments that are fighting terrorism, they're actually not fighting the ideas, they're fighting the groups. So they're fighting terrorists, and they're using the security approach exclusively. Just find these people and arrest them or kill them or whatever. But they're not combating the thoughts, the foundations or the roots of these ideas, and that's why our societies and our people are not immune. Are not immune to those ideas, because again, the society is not doing its job. The people, we are not doing our job, and governments are not doing their fully their job, so that we have a very civil society that looks at people as a human being and forget about this idea that you are superior, or you have the right to judge others or to impose anything on them, or to, it's none of your business. Simply, it's none of your business to judge them, none of your business to convert them, of course, none of your business to impose anything on people. These are individuals, you're sharing the same planet or the same society with them. They are your members of the large human family. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala dignified them. Allah gave them the choice. Who are you to deny them that choice? Let them make their choice and be responsible for it. That's not your job. Allah reserved for him exclusively this judgment and holding people accountable. And they are your members of the same societies. They are your fellow citizens and your neighbors and your colleagues. It's very simple. Very simple. We have to take this disease out of the minds of Muslims, that you are not superior just because you're Muslim. And what matters is basically the principles and values that you live by and your contribution to the greater good. It's not like the title that you're claiming. It's not like belonging to this religion or to this nationality or to that. That makes you better than others. So take away completely this idea of superiority or feeling superior, and fight and uproot completely this idea that people give themselves the right to judge others, or to convert them, or to force them. And if they refuse, then we have to discuss what we should do. And then some people end up with these crazy, horrible ideas. So it's, I mean, I know it's easier for us to play the role of victims and say, I hear the statement that you said all the time, why when an act is committed by a non-Muslim, it's a mental illness. When it is committed by a Muslim, is a terrorist. I mean, that's what it is. That's the reality that we have to live, because there are some people who have agendas and they're capitalizing on this. Okay, let's put it aside. That's our reality. Now, how are we going to deal with that reality? And you rarely see Muslims, when they get together, focus on the second part. It's only the first part, which is describing, complaining, venting out anger, and then end up doing nothing. That's what it is. That's the reality. There are groups and people who have agendas, and in advocating that agenda or advancing that agenda, they are capitalizing on your mistakes or on the things that are committed in the name of Islam. So go and focus on those mistakes, on how to solve them, not keep complaining why you call this mental illness and you call this terrorism.
I need to talk about another issue if I can.
Let's see if anybody has.
If anybody has any question before.
Doesn't have to be a question. You can, if you have
comments.
Comments,
Yes.
or you want to add something.
I just want to add to the same issue here. I would like to use the model that Malik ibn Nabi used which is, he said that there is alam al-afkar, alam al-alaqat, alam al-mashari'a. In English, ideas, the universe or model of ideas, then relations, then projects. So to have a successful or healthy community or even state, you need to have everything in its place. Ideas are correct or good or healthy. Relations will be based on these ideas, then it will be very healthy and productive. Then you have a successful outcome, which is projects. Now, if we look at the idea, I think we should look at the ideas. Where the correction happened, where we have the example of predestiny, al-jabr, and Abdullah mentioned another issues like terrorism or something. This is all happened in the alam al-afkar, in the ideas. So these ideas happened, to me, I think it usually happens after a crisis. It's either on the individual level, some people will have a crisis, then no, they become a terrorist, or they decide to kill everybody, or they decide to be, to go to this group or that group. But for even the nation, when we have like a big crisis, what happened when Muslims start fighting, Malik ibn Abi mentioned that as ما بعد صفين. So Siffin was fighting between the Muslims, and the big questioning came. What happened? Why we are doing that? We are the best people. We are the follower of Rasulullah. I mean, you're talking about the time where there was Sahaba. We are not talking about the generations that came later. No, we're talking about Sahaba fighting each other for, who will be the leader or the ruler of the country. So this big crisis has a lot of reflection on people. So we have the predestiny came from that time, and we have the other side. I mean, you have in physics, there any action has a reaction. So predestiny, it was a great numbers of people decided to be on the okay, everything is written by Allah. And besides the rulers, the winners, which is the Umayyin, they used that. They said, oh, what happened? It's not my fault. It was because it's Allah who chose me. Allah who asked me to, who let me do this. So it's not so it was a tool that they used to justify their crimes and their dhulm. And there's deviation from the principles of Islam. Now, on the other side, we have the other the reaction came where we have the people of I'tizal, or the people who decide, no, there is no predestiny in Islam, and justice of Allah, al-adl, مع الجبر. So, that's what the root cause of happened. Now, the issue of ideas, sometimes you try to correct the relations. But if you are not looking at the ideas, then your work will be just patching, fixing here, firefighting. You can fix this, but it will never be fixed because the ideas is broken. On this Friday, I was listening to the khutbah. Khutbah was good, but the Sheikh mentioned maqasid as حفظ النفس, حفظ العقل, the protection of self, wealth, and they're the ones that came under the dictatorship. They did not look at adl. They did not look at freedom, because you are not free under dictatorship. You cannot be free. So the same thing on adl. You cannot actually ask the ruler why you did this, and he will he will appoint his son. Even his son is not qualified, but because he is his son. Where is that here? Where is the justice? So the ideas, even today, when you go to Jum'ah, we have the work, which is, I think you mention this every time, but the idea, it goes all the way back to the roots, to the alam al-afkar, the models of ideas. If we don't correct that, you have people filling the masjid. Women will be clothed in whatever Islamic clothing. but that doesn't solve the problem. I see in the society. I was talking to one of the brothers the other day, and he said the talaq, divorce between Muslims in America is skyrocketing. Why is that? Because people don't have the ideas of Islam. They are, maybe the look will be Islamic from far, but if you zoom in, you will find our model of ideas or of Islamic principles are not there. We just took the shell, but the core is very far from Islam. Wallah.
That's absolutely true. Jazakallah khair. It's the mindset. It's the way of thinking. And that unfortunately did not change for a very long time. Even those contemporary Islamic revival movements, they did not change the mindsets because the diagnosis was wrong, was superficial. So the diagnosis was people deserted Islam. And by that, they mean they are not in the mosque and the women are not wearing hijab and this and that. So they worked on those appearances and they solved very successfully, but the wrong problem. So it's, you know, they say the surgery was successful, but the patient died. So they attacked or tackled the wrong problem, or they dealt with the symptoms and they did not solve the roots. Or in medical terms, it's basically they closed the wound without cleaning it. So they deposited a layer of religious outlook on a very messed up mindsets and personalities. Nobody tackled those mindsets and those personalities that are the results of centuries of oppression, followed by 1 century of occupation. And these caused a lot of damages. This caused a lot of damage to the personality and to the mindset. I mean, if you add, I mean, each one of these is enough. If you put together, I don't know how many centuries of stagnation and oppression. And don't be fooled by some accomplishment. Yes, there was a lot of accomplishment in the history of Islam, but there was an intellectual stagnation and political stagnation. Both. There is a political oppression and intellectual stagnation, because only things that the dynasties promoted or allowed them to move to happen. That's why architecture, they had no problem with it. Actually, it's good for them. They build castles and mansions. So that's why architectures and arts, etc., that has developed, because that doesn't, it's not a problem for them. But on the other hand, Islam itself, the interpretation of the text and the ijtihad itself was not promoted at all, was suppressed. If you add intellectual stagnation with the political oppression and caused that weakness that resulted in a century of occupation, and then you come and all what you see is the problem, or you define the problem as people are not praying or are not fasting or they are drinking or women are not wearing hijab, so let's try to fix this. Then you get a very, very superficial diagnosis and you ended up dealing with the symptoms. We have to accept sooner rather than later, the sooner the better, that the damage that resulted from those centuries is deep, is very severe, very acute, and then has to be, the roots of it have to be understood and have to be tackled. The Muslim mind was mutilated It's like Islam itself. The understanding of Islam was subject to mutilation, the Muslim mind and the Muslim personality, both of them, they were subject to mutilation, big damage. And the result, it was what you see. See people with no purpose in life, with no ambition, people who don't have the discipline to set some values and principles, and they live by them. People are not honest, people are cheating, people are lying, you name it. People are not doing their responsibilities either as spouses or as parents, etc. People are not learning and they're not reading. It's a big damage. So that's the product. If you think you can fix that product by getting this person to start praying and to start fasting Ramadan, and then maybe a woman to put hijab, and that's it, the problem is solved, then you're fooling yourself. It's like, you know, sometimes, may Allah protect everybody, sometimes people have a very severe illness, but it shows up in the form of some symptoms. I mean, treating the symptoms is not going to help. Actually, it may even be deceiving, because then the symptoms may disappear and you think that you are okay, and the problem is getting worse inside. Yeah. So recently I was sitting with some brothers and I mentioned that 3 times we come up with the wrong diagnosis and we think we solved the problem, and we did not. And these 3 times, these 3 incidents can summarize the contemporary history of Islam and Muslims. The first time, we thought that the problem was the occupation itself, istamar or ihtilal. And then we thought that the solution, which was a problem, but again, the diagnosis was very superficial, was not deep enough, because we thought that the problem is the presence of the foreign soldiers and armies on our lands, and therefore the solution is to kick them out. And that happened, but that was the superficial diagnosis. Why? Because we did not tackle the reasons why you were occupied to begin with. They were occupied because you were weak. So we did not tackle the root causes. So we made it very hard, or our grandfathers, and made it very hard for this occupation to continue, for the direct occupation. And we celebrated when they left, thinking that the job is done or mission is accomplished. We ended up with what? We ended up with indirect occupation and dictatorships, dictatorial regimes. And what did we accomplish? So all those sacrifices, and this is the result. So why? Because we did not tackle the root causes. The root causes is what I mentioned about the damage that affected the personality and the mindset, and then the damage that affected the society, that we were very backward, that we need to build a strong country with a strong economy. We have to promote scientific research and industry and etc., so that you can become really vibrant, prosperous countries that offer freedom and justice, etc. We didn't have that code. So that was the first time. Second time was those Islamic revival groups, which I just mentioned. The diagnosis was people deserted Islam. The definition of the problem: people are not praying, mosques are empty, people are not reading Quran, are not memorizing. So let's work on those. Women are not wearing hijab, so let's work on those. And they did, and they did excellent job. So mosques became full, hijab is everywhere. MashaAllah, so much Islamic literatures. It started with those cassettes in the beginning, and then CDs, and then YouTube channels and websites and social media and TV channels, etc. So problem solved, mission accomplishment. That's not true. The problem that you defined was solved, but your definition of the problem was very superficial. And the result, as you see, the result is not only nothing has improved in terms of economy or science or anything, or even in terms of character and manners of people did not change. Actually, in many cases, it became worse. Overall, the manners and the interaction, muamalat, between people today, very unfortunate with those widespread Islamic appearances, nowadays is definitely is not better, but it is, we know that it is worse than in the 60s and the 70s. There used to be a number of values that have disappeared. So that's the second. The third time was, again, we defined this with the Arab Spring. What was the problem? The problem is those oppressive regimes. Yeah, they are the problem, but they are only the tip of the iceberg. So what's the solution? شعب يريد إسقاط النظام. The people want to topple those regimes. So we had the Arab Spring, and some of those regimes were toppled. And nothing has changed, except maybe to the worse. So, I mean, it is about time when you try things 3 times, and in all 3 times you get the wrong assessment, and therefore the wrong solution, or not the adequate solution, inadequate solution. It is about time to do it right. It is about time to get to the bottom of it and try to resolve it. Now the main reason is we became so weak and therefore very vulnerable. And the main reason is that we have very damaged understanding of Islam that is beyond repair. And therefore we have to rediscover the original Islam, because whether we like it or not, our societies, Muslim societies, are the product of Islam, are the product of the prevailing understanding of Islam. And if that understanding of Islam is messed up or patched, then you're going to get more of the same. So there is no other alternative other than the deep, comprehensive diagnosis that will produce a comprehensive and integrated solution to our problems. Any superficial diagnosis, any focus on one particular issue, because all these issues are related: family and mental and health and economy and the education system and the corruption and akhlaq, and all of these are really very intertwined. And when nations rise, everything improves at the same time, and when they collapse, also everything collapses at the same time, because these things are very much related.
Dr. Suhail, you talk about the mindset. In the Arab world, I don't know about the Muslim country outside the Arab world. In the Arab world, we still teach our kids الشعر الجاهلي. I don't know, some of the الشعر الجاهلي, it's not good, but we still teach it and as a good stuff. And we put the philosophy of that poem in the back mind of our kids, and how you can create, you change the mindset of the kids if we still teach them bad stuff.
Sha'r al-Jahili is the poem, the poetry or poem before Islam. Yeah. Wallahi, Abu Abdullah, I wish that's the only problem we have in our education system, then it can be easily solved. Education system is totally messed up, and it does not prepare the individual for life, and then it does not build really a sound personality. And nowadays, it does not even teach. Because nowadays we have a new phenomena wasn't there before, because our education system may not have been the best before, but at least it used to be very solid in teaching you language and science, etc. At least nowadays, because of the shortcuts, and that's can open big door, people are try to get the typical exams, and they focus on those typical exams, knowing what the professors are lazy. They use the same exams all the time. Professors, they have those private tutoring, and those who join them or participate in private tutoring, they have some privilege, and it's easier for them to pass. As a result of this whole mess, and professors are not happy with their salaries, so they're putting the minimum efforts in schools. As a result of the curriculum messed up, as a result of this whole mess, nowadays we have people who graduate from college in Muslim countries. They are essentially illiterate. And essentially illiterate means that their language is very poor. Their scientific knowledge is very poor, very superficial. Why? Because we had all those shortcuts nowadays. As I said, when things collapse together. That corruption affected the education system because the whole society is corrupt. So the problem is much bigger than that. The curriculum, and I had the opportunity to get exposed to a lot of courses and trainings and certificates and workshops, etc., about teaching and about the curriculum development, etc. We are nowhere close to what's going on in the world. Yeah, Muslims are, they're still teaching a student to memorize. That's learning, even though memorization is the lowest level of learning. Nobody is teaching those students objective thinking, critical thinking, synthesis, analysis, etc. It's all about dumping information on you, memorize it, bring it the day of the test, and then forget it. So the education system, unfortunately, which is that's where personalities and mindsets are shaped. Of course, if you want to take a step back, families are also messed up. The families in which these children are raised and grow up are messed up. And then they go to the school, and the curriculum in the school is not, if you compare it to the curriculum in developed countries, there is no comparison. You can see in those developed, advanced countries, they're using advanced models and approach, scientifically proven. It's not the guesswork. Approaches to shape the personality and shape the mindset of the person. And that's why you see people who at very early age, they have very well-defined personality because they're a product of that education system. So you can see here something that unfortunately many Muslim parents do not like when they see their children from early ages having an opinion and having a personality, and they like this, they don't like that, and they ask questions and they ask you to convince me or to explain why I should do this and why I shouldn't, etc. So because in our culture that's called that's disrespectful to the parents. So the education system in most Muslim countries was the result of patchwork. There is no philosophy behind it. And nobody is doing any assessment or adjustments to that. Nobody is studying the product of that education system. And as long we have that education system, that political system, we still have families are being built and managed haphazardly that way without people having any education or training or being prepared, we're going nowhere. Yeah. And it's very unfortunate to accept the reality that we're going nowhere because basically we know the rule. Things will not change until you do. If you are thinking the same way, if you are the product of the same families that are built, established, and managed very haphazardly in a very primitive way, if you are the product of that messed up education system, if that's the society is the product of this, how it's going to change or improve? And if you add to that, if you are the product of that messed up understanding of Islam, how things are going to improve? And that's why the 3 times we pushed the foreign army out, we brought people to the mosques, and we toppled those oppressive regimes, and nothing has changed because those mechanisms that I just mentioned, they are still working the same way, and they're producing the same people, the same mindsets, and the same personalities.
I was in car dealership 2 days ago. They have new general managers. New general manager for 2 months. I asked him how it's working with you. He told me, when I try to do something, they told me, we don't do that here. We don't do that here. We don't do that here. Okay. He told me how I can change, how I can let this store more successful, how we can increase the sale if we need to do the same stuff, the same steps they used to do it before me. And I think this was going on in the Arab world right now.
That's exactly. Yeah.
You are saying we are going nowhere. No, I think we are going backwards. Going nowhere is meaning we are stuck. I don't think it's happening right now in the Muslim world. Actually, we are going backwards.
Oh, you cannot stop. You cannot be, if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward because life is moving. I mean, nobody is waiting for us. So if you're not moving forward, then chances are that we're moving backward. There was a saying, I'm not sure about the authenticity of the hadith, but in which it says, "Man istawa yawmahu fahuwa maghbun," and then it goes to say that whoever is not moving forward is moving backward. So let me try to find it. But because life is progressing, I mean, if you're not keeping up, it's, the inflation. If the inflation is the deterioration of the value of the money, so if your income does not increase at least as much to deal with that inflation, then you're making the same money, but it has less value. Your buying power will be decreasing. Okay. ومن لم يكن على الزيادة فهو في النقصان ومن كان في النقصان فالموت خير له. Whoever does not improve from one day to another, من استوى يومه فهو مغبون. If you are the same person today and tomorrow, or yesterday and today, then that person is a loser. ومن لم يكن على الزيادة, if you are not improving, then you're going backwards. Things are deteriorating. من لم يكن على الزيادة فهو على النقصان. Yes, somebody is raising your hand. Yes, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. I just
Alaikum.
joined, I don't know the exact topic, but I heard a few words about probably the discussion of education in Muslim countries and here too in America. The thing is this, I think they teach critical thinking and objective thinking, which is good. But here in America, everything, they are secularizing all the thoughts and they are very liberal with their ideas. And so what is happening because of the secularism, it is causing moral decay of not only Islam, but Christianity and Judaism. All the moral code of all the religions are being threatened because of the secularism. So they are doing more harm in this way, and it's becoming a global problem. So I think in Muslim countries, at least, they are not that secularized, but they will eventually, be involved, I'm sure, with the rest of the West. So and their Islamic education, like you said, is obviously not correct. So Muslims in America, I mean, what we should do, get the best of the education that they are giving here in science and critical thinking and research and all that, and get the best of our Islamic knowledge. So I think the Muslims in America and maybe Britain, Europe, they should be the role models, because they can take both the best of both Muslim world and the good things that are taught here in the universities, and that would be the only way to. Because I know I come from Pakistan. In Pakistan, it's all cultural. The Islam is all cultural, and nobody practices the true Islam. Very few people try to learn on their own.
Actually, there is hardly, Jazakallah khair, that's a good point. There is hardly anything we need to learn from the education system in the Muslim world, because even teaching Islam is not done effectively. And some countries is not done at all, because the regimes is secular and it's not. But even when they are teaching religion, just try to go and check the graduate in most Islamic countries, the graduate of engineering and medicine, etc., and see how much they know about Islam, or the people when they come out of graduate from high school. You find very limited, and sometimes even it's limited, and also it's not correcting, it's not adequate. But you're right. This country is designed this way. There is nothing we can do about it. This country is secular, and the education system is secular. This country is very diverse. There is no way they can teach religion in their schools. So it is designed that way. You take advantage of that, of the education system. It's very efficient in so many ways, but also you need to limit any damage by taking advantage of the rights that you have as a parents. That's one. And second, by taking responsibility as a community to complement the teaching of the public schools with the good, solid, efficient Islamic teachings. It doesn't have to be full-time Islamic schools, because not all parents can afford or can, and community cannot accommodate all Muslim children in Islamic schools. But there should be a good supplemental teaching of the Islamic faith. And that's our responsibility. We cannot expect it to be done. And we have to develop our own curriculum here. And I'm sure I have seen a lot of progress in this, because there used to be, unfortunately, in the beginning, and that's probably normal and understood. In the beginning, they used to bring books from Saudi Arabia and from Jordan and from Iraq and from Pakistan, maybe from here and there, and maybe translate them and use them here to teach children in Islamic schools, both full-time Islamic schools and part-time Islamic schools. Mostly in part-time, the ones that teach religion. But then there are a lot of good work that was done here in producing some literature that is more adequate. You cannot raise a child in America with the same material that was developed in Pakistan or Saudi Arabia or in any other place in the world. Even the examples, even the pictures, even the culture, everything is different. So you're right, we need to leverage and capitalize, take advantage of the education system. It's very efficient in many ways. You can see the product, you can see the personality that is shaped but it's not perfect. There is a damage that we need to limit by taking advantage of our rights as parents in what our children can learn and should learn or should not, and by doing our job that starts from the house and then continues with the community, to take responsibility of really teaching our children Islam in an efficient way. And we're not doing it. We're not doing it because you cannot give that which you don't have. Parents have very superficial knowledge of Islam and inadequate, and therefore they cannot convey that. And then they rely completely on the Sunday school or Islamic school, part-time Islamic school. And many of those schools either are not well funded, or they don't have people who are qualified to teach, or they don't have the adequate material. So it's not really working. There are some successes here and there, but I think if we have some good statistics, we'll find out that as families and as communities, we are not succeeding in this responsibility. Sometimes we are fooled by some few successful stories, but what percentage are those good children, that the children that I mean, they're proud of their identity and they continued practicing Islam, etc., compared to the masses. And unfortunately, sometimes we prefer this denial approach. There are so many problems among Muslim youth, drugs, and all kinds of problems, but we prefer to slip things under the rugs and don't talk about it because it's a matter of pride. But that's not going to help solving it. That's not going to help solving those problems. Muslim youth are suffering from identity problems, mental problems, psychological tension, and they are lost. And because, again, parents did not do their job adequately, and the community is not doing its job adequately.
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to say, that even if the parents, they do good job, but the kids are spending more time outside in the school. The outside influence does more harm sometimes than than if parents they try to do their best. Of course, parents are also juggling their work and parenting both. So that's
Yeah.
another
Believe
factor.
me, if we do, our job starting from establishing the family itself, we have to stop this haphazard marriages without adequate education and preparation for the spouses, premarital. It starts there. And then parenting, it's a science. People have to read and educate themselves and stop doing this job of parenting, learning on the job or haphazardly. Parenting in general. Now, when it comes to teaching Islam, you cannot give that which you don't have. Majority of parents, it's not because they don't have time. It's because their knowledge, Islamic knowledge, is very superficial. It's not adequate. You cannot give that which you don't have. So they convey to the children very dull, very superficial, sporadic ideas. Pray so that Allah does not throw you in hellfire. Do this and do that. And that's not the Islamic teaching I was talking about. We're talking about explaining to our children Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and having them love Allah and have that very strong relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, explaining to them the mission of Islam. What is the essence of the deen? It's not just pray and my child, pray and fast so that you don't end up in hellfire. And explain to them the ultimate purposes of Islam, or maqasid. This religion came to achieve overarching noble goals that Allah has given us the responsibility to do it, and the honor. to execute his plan. All of this is not being done. And then role models. Children are not seeing role models at home, and they're not finding role models and mentors in the community. So that's at home. And then you go to the community, then you need, in addition to solid Islamic teaching, like in the form of part-time school or educational program, etc. But also you need some sort of mentorship, because children, when they reach a certain age, parents, there is so much they can do with them. They need big brothers, big sisters. They need mentors. When the student is in high school, he or she needs a mentor from college. When they are in college, they need mentors like young professional, somebody who are at the next stage in life. To have this whole concept of mentorship is not there in the community. So we cannot blame those children. We are putting them in a very difficult situation. They are raised in a family that was established haphazardly, managed haphazardly, and they were raised haphazardly. They were not given adequate Islamic teaching. A lot of them, they don't see role models at home. And then they go to the communities, no adequate educational program or Islamic teaching, no role models, no mentors. What do you think? And well, it's from the blessing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that situation is not worse than this.
Other problem is about marriage. You know, a lot of divorces happening, and because, like you said, maybe we are not educating them before getting married, and
That's a starting point. If we want to break this cycle, that's a starting point. It's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. Children who are raised in families that was established haphazardly, and children who were raised haphazardly, they grow up to establish a family haphazardly, and it's a vicious cycle. And it has to be broken. And it requires leadership, it requires vision, it requires very much more serious efforts than the one that we are doing. We are happy to have some facilities and some activities running in mosques, but we are fooling ourselves because we are not tackling the root causes of the problem. We're not confronting the reality, and we are not coming up with the solutions. We just want the problem to go away, to cover it or to patch it. And we think that will do the job. It's unfortunately, we came to this country, we brought with us all the problems, and we did not take full advantage of what's going on here. Where we can, a lot of time we see only the negative things, whether in the education system or in the society, but we don't see a lot of positive things that are happening that makes advanced societies in general much closer to Islam than Muslim societies, much closer in the fact people interact, the fact people think, the way people think, the way people interact, the way people behave. It's much closer to Islam. And I mentioned this before. There was a study studying countries, I mean, criterion, like Islamic criterion, which societies it's closer to Islamic principles and values. The first country in the world was Finland. And the first Muslim countries was Malaysia, number 16. That is basically that in the society, the way people think and behave and interact and every manners and character is closer to Islamic values. Yeah. Very embarrassing.
I mean,
so what was this study? Sorry.
Well, it's a long time ago. I need to look for it.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It was a study done, basically take some, for example, honesty, some Islamic criteria, compassion, etc., and go and see in every country to what extent that principle is applied or that value. And they found that Islamic principles are much more applied in many non-Muslim societies.
Sure. Jazakallah.
Yes, Brother Muhammad.
I want to just share something, which is about what the sister said and what you mentioned earlier about critical thinking and objective learning. Most of the, I mean, I cannot deny, there is actually some critical thinkers these days. Like we have in Algeria, there is Dr. He's a professor, or Dr. Ohamna Dowak. One time, not a few years ago, he was on the TV and he said, we cannot enter the current modern ages with the methodology of Shafi'i. He said that, he mentioned Shafi'i. And you know, he's, of course, I totally agree with him, because Shafi'i was good at that time, and we cannot use his methodology to solve our problems today. But on the other hand, if you look at the World Cup now, they invited several so-called scholars or dahiyas or something to convert people to Islam or something. I don't know. One of them is Sheikh called Dakir Naik and Uthman al-Khamis. And to me, I watch sometimes small videos for Uthman al-Khamis, and I think if you watch him and you have some critical thinking and some questions, maybe you would become not Muslim. I don't know how they will convert people to Islam by using some traditional. I have respect for a human being, but the methodology, the traditional way of thinking, is not going to convert. I don't care about converting people to Islam. I want Muslims to understand Islam in the current alive way, not just the traditional. Most of the kids, and my son maybe one of them these days, are looking for the scholars in America, and most of them, they go to old books and just teaching them from these old books. And they are, because the model they provide or broadcast is somebody with something on his head, turban or something, and long beard. So kids from America, for some reason, I don't know why they admire this view. They don't look at the ideology or the ideas or what's these teachings. I mean, there is something wrong here. I don't know how we can change the attraction for the educated kids. My son finished bachelor degree. He finished George Mason, and lots of people like him. They are educated. They are nice. They are doing everything for Islam. But when it comes to deep or superficial, they still at the superficial level. I don't know what can you do to do this, to fix this.
That's a very good point and very big issue. Inshallah, we'll come back to it another time, but just a couple of words, couple of thoughts. First of all, the traditional, what you call traditional, which is traditional version of Islam, is a coherent one. So our children or these young Muslims in this country, they are presented with a package. The traditional version of Islam, and unfortunately, even the extremist version of Islam, it's also a package. So they are being presented with a package that is coherent, consistent, exciting to some extent. I mean, those turban, etc. These are very exotic, and it's like you go to a museum and you see things that are interesting. On the other hand, there is no other alternative. I mean, this true version of Islam is yet to be developed into a coherent paradigm and being presented to our children. First of all, even when we do that, they're not going to accept it easily, because if you compare it to what is available, it's much deeper and much more complex. Compare it to those simplistic ideas. I mean, imagine talking about mission of Islam and maqasid or ultimate purposes and etc. Things are really, compared to turban and long beard and dressed this way, and you're fine. You're applying sunnah. Or those terrorist groups that you go to Iraq or Syria or this and that country, and then you fight, and in a couple of days you are in Firdaus, in the highest level of paradise. So we really, again, have to take charge and take responsibility. And I cannot blame young people. I cannot blame those who go for traditional Islam. Unfortunately, I cannot blame even those who are recruited by extremist groups. They succeed to recruit them. I cannot blame those who desert Islam altogether, because the options that are available to them are bad and are limited. And that's because of our failure to do our job, to represent Islam in the best possible way and to teach them Islam in the right way. And there is no alternative. There is no alternative than breaking this cycle and developing the true version of Islam, the original version, first of all, finding that original, that last version of Islam, very inspiring, very empowering, makes you very ambitious, makes you a truly happy person, someone who's lives by certain values and principles, and someone that makes all your purposes in life will converge, not diverge, not becomes tense, that you cannot reconcile being a good Muslim and good citizen, being a good Muslim and being very ambitious. You want to be successful in life, etc. The true version of Islam reconcile all of these and make them converge, and your purposes of seeking the good pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be the ultimate goal that will make everything converge, that you take care of your health, you try to realize all your potential, because that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants you to be. You want to be happy and successful in this life, and you want to be a very good citizen. You maximize your contribution to the greater good. You try to be all you can be, and while in doing this, you are a good Muslim. That's what was lost, and the original understanding of Islam was lost or disintegrated, and then everybody came up with some bits and pieces and made their own version of Islam. I have no doubt that if the original version of Islam is rediscovered and developed and presented to our children, they will love it. They will make them very proud and very happy to be Muslim, because Islam, the purpose of Islam is to develop that very coherent personality. You know the verse in Surah Al-Zumar, ضرب الله مثلا رجلا فيه شركاء متشاكسون ورجلا سلما لرجل هل يستويان مثلا. Find the translation of the verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Zumar says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically used the example of two people. The one who is, and I wish people really give this verse of Quran adequate attention, because that's the purpose of our religion, is that rajulan salaman li rajul, that all your purposes in life becomes converge in one direction. It's Surah Al-Zumar verse 29. ضرب الله مثلا رجلا سلما لرجل رجلا فيه شركاء متشاكسون ورجلا سلما لرجل. Allah puts forward this illustration. Can a man who has for his masters several partners at odds with each other, be considered equal to a man devoted wholly to one master. Beautiful verse, like all the Quran, that we failed to have this version of Islam that will make this young person at peace with themselves, at peace with their environment, at peace, and make all parts of their identity, the fact they are Muslim, the fact they are citizen, the fact they are students, the fact that this and that, all of these become very in phase and consistent and coherent with one another. Not actually what we did, exactly the opposite. We create a tension between these things and confusion so that people are no longer capable of reconciling commitment to Islam with compassion, with good citizenship, with ambition in this life, because a lot of them, they hear in Jumu'ah sermon that this life is not important, and it's okay to be poor. The Prophet was poor. It's okay to fail. Just focus on the hereafter, etc. And I mean, a lot of time we cause more harm than good by and I had the opportunity to deal with a lot of young people in this country who really are victims of this situation that starts at home and then continues in the community.
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Suhail. Inshallah, see you next Sunday.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
السلام عليكم جزاك الله خير.
Salam wa rahmatullahi.